There were two gentlemen in a situation. The situation was these gentlemen had to go and retrieve a person who was in a different landmass. One gentleman was pretty rich, and the other gentleman just had moderate funds. And so the first gentleman that was rich, he got all his people together, and he began his strategy. First, they had to find the person, locate the person. And so this guy devoted quite a few funds to locating this person. And he spent quite a few funds past his budget. And he called everybody together. He said, is there a different way we can find this person? They said, no, we're going to have to exhaust the rest of the funds to hunt for this person through digital means. He said, well, no, we can't do that anymore. So he scrapped that plan and came up with another. So in this one, he had sort of like an advertisement. He spent some funds on that one, not as much as the first time. And so he had these little ads everywhere online, right, in certain newspapers and things, and no results whatsoever. He knew the landmass the person was on, but he couldn't find the person. It was very urgent. The task was to find the person. It's very urgent. So he said, well, we've gone over budget. We can't do this anymore. Does anybody have an idea of what we can do this cheaper? Somebody proposed that, just go through a chain of people, just put the word out on social media and see what they get. And so he used minimal resources to get this done. And of course, he couldn't do it. Nothing showed up. And so he said, we just can't do it. So he contacted the individual who gave him that charge in the first place and asked him to find the person. He said, well, I'm sorry, we can't do it. We spent way over what we were supposed to spend, and I just can't do it. And the guy said, well, I thank you, because the guy spent maybe $500,000-$600,000 on trying to find it. And he said, well, you've done more than enough, thank you. And he hung up. And so he contacts the other guy with limited resources. The other guy heard the story of why he wanted the person found in the first place. And unlike the first guy who had the resources, this guy had a lot of compassion in his heart. And so he began to search by social media first, but there were no results. No results came about from his search either. So he went to the landmass. He up and moved to the landmass, because the guy that was searching for this individual was actually searching for a sibling. And it was a heartbreaking story. And the first guy was rich and he had a lot of resources, but he just went over budget, right? And they wanted to help, but it went over budget, so he couldn't do it. The other guy was touched by compassion. And so all of a sudden he up and moves. He understands how important it is for this person to find him. So did the other guy, but this guy had compassion. So he moved to the landmass where the person was, and he began to ask around personally. And every day he would go to a different city. Every single day he did this. And within every city, he began to cancel out, certain things that just wouldn't meet the criteria, this, that, and the other. Well, about a year went by. And the guy says, well, I haven't heard from you in a long time. And the guy said, well, I live over here now. And I think I'm close. And the guy said, well, it's been a whole year. And he said, don't worry. I'm going to still search. And so the guy had exhausted all of his funds and everything else. He moved to a brand new place he wasn't even familiar with, all because he had compassion on the story. And when you know it, he came across the man. This guy endeavored, going broke and everything else, to find this other person. It was of no benefit to him, but it was of great benefit to the individual. And so finally, he found the person. And he calls the guy up and he says, I found your sibling. And the guy was so excited. He gave him the address and stuff. And the guy came over there and he said, well, I want to go to your house. And before I meet this guy, I want to go to your house and see how you did it and everything. So the guy says, well, he gave an address to a hotel. The guy comes to the hotel and he says, "This is where you live?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, how did you even search if you didn't have money?" He said, "Well, I did, but I couldn't find him living, in that country, so I moved to this country." He said, "You've been in a hotel all this time?" He said, "No, I had a house, but the more I searched, I had to spend more time on searching because I understood how important this was, and so I kind of gave up the house, and that funded the rest of the operation so I could really feed myself while I'm, finding him." So he eventually found him, and the guy says, "I don't understand why you spend every last dime to find something that won't benefit you." He said, "Well, I understood your story." He said, "I understood it." And he understood the importance of finding a sibling. So out of love, he said he did it. And it was enough for him. And the guy said, "Well, do I owe you anything or anything?" He said, No. He said, "My reward is to you finding your sibling." And the guy couldn't believe he did that. So they finally met the sibling, and the guy said, "This is the guy who found you." Come to find out, his sibling spoke a different language because he was raised by different people. But when they found each other, the sibling was just, they were just elated. So the guy went back to his hotel room, and of course they got acquainted and everything. And all of a sudden he gets a call. And the guy says, "Well, we're going to get you he said, "Do you want to go back home where you lived?" He said, "Well, that would be nice." He said, "Well, okay." That night they gave him a call, and they said, "Hey, we just put together some funds to get your place back where you lived at." And so they bought this guy a place that he really liked, and they just bought it hook, line, and sinker, furnished it, and everything else. Come to find out, the sibling he found was super rich, but he spoke a different language. But neither one of them could understand how he found it. All these other companies who did this professionally failed. And he just explained it. He said the other companies failed because to them it was a task. It was simply a task, a job for someone. He said, but for me it was personal. And he explained to them he lost his siblings. He lost his siblings, and by the time he found his siblings, they were dead. And so out of love for reconnecting siblings, he sacrificed everything he had because he understood how important it was, because of love itself. And a beautiful story. Here's the moral of this story. In this life, you're going to do many things. And God said, he gave us a command to love one another, right? He did. If he gave us a command to love one another, and if he's the one responsible for setting up trials and tribulations, then he would have every task that you do for someone done by way of love. So how would he do that? By making sure that love is the qualifier for you finishing every task he will give you. Well, how does the Lord do that? He'll have you in a position where you have to exhaust things personally to get things done, so that you may only finish your task only by love. If he commanded that we love one another, then to finish a task of the Lord can be done no other way than by love, which will cost you a lot. You see, when you have to give up things, you can only continue by way of love. Love is the only qualifier that can bring you through something like that, where you have to give up everything when you don't benefit. Only by love can something be done that way. Many of you have been in predicaments, and you don't understand why it's so challenging. Because the Lord called you to a task, and his tasks are bound in love. So when you do something by love, it must be completed only by love itself, not by brains or talent, smarts, or anything else, so it requires sacrifice. During the process of completing that task, you may be required to give up quite a bit, but you'll only complete it by way of love. When you do complete it by way of love, there are promises upon your life. So in this world, many of you have lost quite a bit, right? And you don't understand how another person can do it. And they keep skating through, not losing what you lost, but when you do it, your compassion is so high that it's only by love you have gotten to a certain position. The Lord is qualifying your life, that you finish the tasks He is giving you by way of love and no other way. I want you guys to understand that method that's upon your life. And you will eventually complete what He has sent you here to do by love itself. It can't be completed any other way. So you understand that. So you know that. And now that you know, it should give answer to quite a few things in your life. Even when you read the Bible, you're going to see this echoed over and over and over again. So don't think it's strange when you face certain trials and you lose certain things in these tasks, these compassionate things that you do. To lose things does not mean you have lost. It means you're on your way. And when you do so, and love is established as that path, you're certainly on the path of righteousness. That's all I got for you, folks. I really hope that helps you understand certain aspects of your life.